Gang, here we go. We are live, finally. So we are in a new location. The lighting might not be perfect. Sorry if I look a little bit dark here, gang. But I'm Coach Chris, and with me today we have a special guest and our usual crew for our Multisport Mondays, where we talk about everything triathlon in the Chicago area. Talk about coaches, communities, races, anything and everything, including some very exciting new events. Also with us today are our usual partners in crime.
Coach Brian here.
And Coach Joy.
And our special guest.
Fred CRITCH, or Freddie Machete.
The man, the myth, the legend, Freddie Machete.
And if you've been watching any of our fun little shorts, you will have seen Fred when we did one of our broadcasts from Cafe Oliva down there on Ohio Street Beach, and talking about the ways in which things might happen in a swim and inside a wetsuit.
Inside of a wetsuit, yes.
Yeah.
And also from our very first episode.
Oh, that's right. Our actual first official live roundtable.
Yeah. So our two big pieces of news before we get into talking to the man, the myth, the legend. We had an indoor triathlon this past weekend, our first ever really formal summer indoor Tri-312 event. We have one more coming up at the end of July. So we had a busy weekend because of that. But also this past week, there was some really big news. The first ever Ironman event in Illinois was announced. We were out there. We had a special video to announce the beginning of everything. The special announcement that nobody knew where the Ironman event would be, and then we made a cameo appearance at the Rock River and the new Rockman Guardian statue to unveil the new event, which was very, very exciting. And there was a great video that Brian put together with some interviews to feature the race. And then also we had another video he put together for our indoor triathlon this past weekend as well. So if you've never done an indoor tri, go check out that video. And then if you're interested in learning more about Rockford, we have the whole press conference and some interviews with the race director, the local triathlon club, Rock River Multisport. So it's really exciting to see this Ironman event coming to Illinois finally. If you look at, I think, the top 20 most populous states in the U.S., we are the only state that did not have an Ironman event. And so now we finally do have one.
Save the best for last.
Save the best for last, exactly.
But speaking of interviews, if you go on, and Chris, I don't know if there's a link where they can go watch this, or go to our brand new Ironman Rockford Facebook page. Is one of us got a chance to be interviewed by channel or the ABC News affiliate here in Chicago to promote said race.
Yeah, we'll have to add that into the
description.
The description. I have not had
If you subscribe, you will get exclusive access to that interview by ABC.
I promise it was better than how I'm talking right now. But yeah, we were on ABC 7, did a little cameo on their show, talking about the announcement with the Visitors Bureau, the Convention Visitors Bureau at Rockford. So yeah, super exciting news. We obviously have not gotten enough sleep in the last week with all this exciting news and activity taking place. But yeah, check that out for sure. Lots of new
What's
content.
the date of Rockford?
So June
22nd,
2025.
And they have secured a 3-year contract with the city of Rockford. So not sure if the dates will be relatively the same. Will always be in June, but at least this first one is June 22nd, 2025, but with races to also be in 2026 and 2027. So we'll see how long it goes past that.
Now the question for you is, are you racing Rockford 2025? And if you are racing Rockford 25, which triathlon community are you training with? I am not personally racing it because I'm just not. But these gentlemen are.
Got
And-
priority registration, which, by the way, we are wanting to make sure we let you know that general registration started today and is going on right now. So I think one of the questions, sort of a secondary question is that do we have betting odds on how quickly this race will sell out? Is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? Will it be weeks or will it be months before this race sells out? What do you think?
I think it'll be pretty quick. I think I don't give it more than 2 months.
Okay.
I'm going to have to say 45 days.
Okay.
Oh,
'Cause the law-
that's
I say
that's a good guess.
2 months and 1 week.
2 months and 1 week. Okay.
Right
We're
after
going to Price is Right.
This is like Price is Right, because you guys are like taking
1 minute.
You guys are taking my bids.
the reason is Ironman Wisconsin. I think after Ironman Wisconsin,
Okay.
if people haven't heard about the race yet, they will, and it'll probably sell out because it's a perfect build-up race for Ironman Wisconsin.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, you've got several months leading up to that race for you to be primed for 70.3 and then primed and just keep doubling up, ready for the full in September. But
I'm sticking with 45 days.
okay.
Okay.
All right. I had athletes reach out to me saying that they might be coming out of retirement just for this race. So I will go under 45 days.
Okay.
So 48 hours to 45 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm right there in the middle. So 45 days would have been my pick. So, and you said 2 months and 1 day or something like that.
Two
And 1
months
week.
and 1 week.
Okay,
Right, 2
how
months
quickly
and-
did Louisville get sold out before when it got announced?
Louisville went to tier 2 in less, I believe, 24 hours.
Okay.
That's like
I think
literally.
by the end of today, Rockford will probably be on tier 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sign up early.
Yeah.
And if you're not racing, we definitely encourage you to sign up and volunteer or come out. I posted about Rockford. That if people don't know, the Rockford Peaches is a baseball team that was in the women's league and featured
Women's
in
professional.
in the movie A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
And the famous quote, there's no crying in baseball, is apparently a cheer sign that they use at all the local running events out there in Rockford. And we threw the challenge out there to see if anyone would dress up in a Rockford Peaches uniform tri-kit. So I think we might have a cheer station with some Rockford Peaches. There might be an athlete racing in a Rockford Peaches tri-kit. So there'll be some fun themes out there for sure.
But you know what's exciting about an inaugural race? I mean, you'll get there on race week and no one's going to be saying, the swim is kind of this or that. No one's going to have experience with this race. Everybody's starting, from scratch. So it's kind of exciting. No one has that extra race experience. So that's kind of neat about inaugural races.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned because most of my race prep involves getting on full gas and prepping the race course ahead of time. We won't have that opportunity this time around. So maybe it will be an advantage for us here locally nearby Rockford to perhaps connect with our new friends at the Rock River Multisport to be able to maybe go out and ride the course ahead of time and get a little bit of that awareness before the race.
And I saw there was, and I forget the name, so I'll have to put this in the description, but Rockford has a event where they create floats and have them go down the river, like really creative, silly, people in costume type of floats. And that could be an opportunity to recon the swim course potentially. And I think that's in a couple weeks. So,
Chris, you're not supposed to be in any floaty or bouncy housey.
a floating bouncy house.
No.
I think that's a good idea.
I think that could make the Iron race a little bit more fan friendly, spectator friendly. Everybody gets to be on a tube or a float to race or to float with their swimmer downriver all the way until we have to swim out, and then I guess they just keep going. I don't know how the exit would work, but that would be a lot of fun. I mean, that'd be a lot of like other things to have to swim around or navigate around. But that would make for certainly an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, we not very scientifically measured the current on the river, which can vary based on rain and weather and all that, but 1 to 2 feet per second, so pretty strong current. So it'll be interesting to see if a bag of potato chips could make the swim cutoff if you just drop it in the river. So yeah, I think flat course, spectator friendly, downriver swim. It's got a lot of key features that will make this a very popular race.
And last little bit though is on the Ironman website, the Rockford page is now up and official. They do have a link there for training ideas and tips, and also to have an option to connect with a coach. So because now TriDot is directly affiliated with Ironman, they have 2 links there that you can either go in and search for a coach that may be Ironman U affiliated, or you can also go in and have TriDot potentially match you with a coach. So if you're looking for someone specific based on your style, what you sort of gravitate to in terms of style and dynamic of a coach, that would be a good way to connect with TriDot, learn a little bit more about the application software, maybe even be able to connect with a coach to help you get to and complete that race, especially if it's your first time.
Cool.
And shameless plug, we are all TriDot coaches. So if any one of the 3 of us fits your sort of style and dynamic as a coach or personality type, then for sure reach out to us, send us a comment or DM us, and we will be sure to try to make that connection.
Or sign up for the next TriDot Pool School. That will be in August.
August 10th through 11th is the next one. So sign up quickly because it will sell out.
And if you're someone that wants to work on the swim, but you're focused on marathon running this season, we might have another pool school coming up in the fall in October.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Cool. Stay tuned. All right. Well, speaking of Ironman events, one of the most prominent Ironman athletes in the Chicago area is with us right now, Fred CRITCH, aka Freddie Machete. A lot of folks who are in the Chicago area might know Fred from seeing him at Ohio Street Beach because he lives right here, which is actually a block away from Ohio Street Beach. And frequently, or pretty much every year for, I feel like probably almost a decade now, you've been also on the swim course support crew on a stand-up paddleboard at the Chicago Tri. And I think the only stand-up paddleboard at the Chicago Tri.
Yeah, there have been a couple of kayaks from time to time, some years, but the only paddleboard. I like the paddleboard because you can get right down in between the athletes, maneuver, and not hurt anybody. So the paddleboard's unique in that if you use a kayak paddle, you can really maneuver well and get to that person who's having that panic attack. But it's been rewarding to do some support for the Chicago Tri and also for the swim clinics that are affiliated with the Chicago Tri.
So if you see someone on a stand-up paddleboard with a ponytail, his name is Fred. Come up to him, say hello. He is a great mentor to almost every single one of our first-timer Ironman athletes. Has a lot of experience.
And a wealth of knowledge.
A wealth of knowledge. He can talk to you forever about any Ironman event, pretty much. But I feel like we don't ever really get to know Fred or your history in triathlon of like how you started or how you got into the sport and what has kept you motivated to stay in the sport of triathlon. So if we rewind all the way back to your first triathlon, when did you do your first triathlon?
Well, it actually goes back way back, before that, because I was never an athletic kid. I was a science type student. And my parents said, "Oh, you don't need a gym class." But I went to a school where you had to take a swimming class and a tennis class and whatnot. So, I did, I could run. I could do a few things when I was a kid. But my junior year in high school, a young lady in one of my classes asked me to go for a run with her after school. This is late 1970s, early 1980s. And people didn't run back then. And so I thought, wow, I'll do this with you. And I started running. And I thought it was a blast, but I would only run, a couple miles at a time. And then I was at a desk job as a computer programmer in my mid-20s, And my doctor said, things aren't looking good. You know, you're going to die young. So I started running again because it was the only thing I knew how to do. And, you know, I moved to Chicago, living on the lakefront, and you see everything on that path out there, and you decide you've got to be active as well. So I started running the Chicago Marathon in 1996. So I did the marathon, you know, a few years, every year since then. And I wanted something more. And I watched the Chicago Triathlon for a few years out my window, and I thought, that looks pretty cool. So I went down there and I watched people getting out of the water, getting on their bikes, and I thought, I can do this. I can do this. So I signed up for the 1999 Chicago Tri. Back then it was called Mrs. T's Chicago Tri.
Mrs. T's.
It was sponsored by Mrs. T's Pierogies. When you went to the expo, they would
Yeah,
give you a little
pierogies.
helping of pierogies. So I didn't have a bike. I didn't think it through. So someone loaned me a bike a few days before the race. And I thought, I can swim. I remember swimming in high school, but you know, I was in my late 30s, and so a lot of time had passed. 20 years had passed since I had swam. So I went out to Ohio Street Beach one day and realized it's not like riding a bike. You do forget how to swim.
Yeah.
So I logged enough hours out there, got my time down to about, for the Olympic swim, about 35 minutes, somewhere in there. So my favorite story about my first Chicago Triathlon was I wanted to get under 3 hours. And I don't know why, I just picked this random time. It looked nice and even. And back then, we didn't have nice watches. I had a Polar watch that if you touched the button in the center, it would turn off. Somebody's elbow hit my watch, it was off in the water. So when I got out of the water, I had no idea how I did. I was on the bike, still don't know how I'm doing. I was on the run, had no idea, but I remember stopping at a water station and drinking and thinking to myself, what if this is the difference between making it under 3 hours and not making it under 3 hours? I threw my water cup down and went running, and I finished, and I had no idea what my time was. Back then, your results came on a postcard a few days later. My postcard said, and I still have photos of this postcard, said 2:59:59.
Oh, no way.
Yes. Yes. I was so excited.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good thing you threw that water down.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got sucked into triathlon. Yeah. That was 1999. And I just did Olympic for the next couple of years. My first one was Olympic, and then, or international distance, as Chicago Tri calls it. And then Lake Geneva had a half iron distance. So I did that in 2003, but I went to watch it in 2002. I never liked doing a race that I had not seen in person. So I went and watched what people were doing, and then I raced it in 2003. And right before I did that Lake Geneva half distance race, I had gone to Ironman Wisconsin, the 2003 Ironman Wisconsin. And I watched that, and I said, "Oh, I have to do this." So I quickly, got pulled into taking it up one notch, higher and higher, from being a runner, running marathons, and then wanting to do something a little longer than a marathon, and so I got myself to Ironman Wisconsin in 2004, and it was a great experience, but. I decided not to sign up for something in 2005 because it was a lot of time and a lot of money. And then once I realized, yeah, I do want to sign up for something after all, every race in North America was sold out. They used to sell out really quickly back then. So I tried again in 2006 and could not get into Ironman Wisconsin because it sold out immediately. As it went online, the active registration site would shut down, and then it would come back up saying, sorry, race is sold out. So I went and stood in line in 2007 before, on site the day after the race, before it went online for sale. And that's how I got into Ironman Wisconsin for 2008, because you had to be very aggressive about trying to get your registration. And once I was racing Ironman Wisconsin, I took advantage of the fact that an athlete can register for the following year, the day before the current year's race. So I got sucked into that, and I started doing Ironman Wisconsin every year. I did it for 10 years. And I went to do other Ironman races as well, Louisville, Coeur d'Alene, and some races that aren't here anymore. There was one race in New York City, in New Jersey, and then we finished in Manhattan, and the host hotel was in Times Square.
Nice.
And Chris did that race as well. So it's been a fun adventure. But I got sucked in, and I had some bumps.
And
on the road.
now every year you don't race Ironman Wisconsin. You're on the sidelines with
Yes.
some fun costumes.
Yeah, with costumes. Although I'm looking to go back to Wisconsin at least one more time, maybe next year
For a full?
For full, yeah.
Well, this would be what, your 20th anniversary of your first Ironman Wisconsin?
Yes,
it would be.
Yeah, I did 2004, so this would be. I'm signed up for Lake Placid, which is 3 weeks from now.
Goal.
So yeah, so I have to go to Lake Placid, and if that goes okay, then I'll feel like my body is not aging too quickly, and I'll think about Wisconsin. If it's still open this year, maybe this year.
Yeah.
But that's the history of how I got sucked into triathlon, and then I didn't right away go to iron distance. I enjoyed international distance, Olympic distance for a while, and along that journey, I did a heck of a lot of indoor triathlons sponsored by Chris and Joy. I think since 2012, I've done your indoor triathlons. Maybe 2, 3, 4 of them per season. So it's been amazing. I remember in my first marathon, in the corrals, talking to a gentleman who had done, like 7 marathons, and I thought, wow, And before I knew it, I was that person who had, run. Now I've run the Chicago Marathon 25 times, and my Ironman finishes the count is at 18 right now.
Wow.
So, it's just amazing how if you enjoy doing something year after year, the time flies by and the numbers keep clicking. One thing that I want to add about my Ironman finishes is I've started 21 Ironmans and I've finished 18. There were 3 Ironmans that I did not finish. And you learn a lot about yourself in racing, whether it's a short distance race or a long distance race. And the 3 that I did not finish, for various reasons, may be among my favorite races ever. Either because I learned to roll with the punches and just accept it that I didn't finish, or that I turned it around and had a great day and cheered on my friends. So there's a lot to be said about what you learn about yourself in racing. In fact, I tell a lot of new triathletes, you hear this from a lot of folks, that triathlon is a metaphor for life. Because you learn how to prepare and you learn the consequences of not preparing. And if you prepare the best you can, something can still happen. So you learn to roll with the punches. Yeah. You learn to recover, keep your head up, stay optimistic. And there are so many skills that you learn in triathlon that transfer to the rest of life. Sometimes in life you have family emergencies, things that just happen out of the blue that are not under your control. And you can things like that will happen in triathlon. Whether you're at your race, you're in transition, getting ready, putting on your wetsuit, and you realize you don't have a bicycle helmet, something like that. So those things will happen in triathlon, and they prepare you for other things in life, I think.
Do you have one specific thing that you can look back to as your most memorable experience?
Oh yeah, most memorable experience by far is running down the red carpet in Kona. That's yeah. There are a lot of other just small moments. In fact, for my first several Ironman races, when I was finished, before I'd go to bed at night, I'd write notes down about who were the people who I spoke to, what were their names, and what was their story. Because you hear some incredible personal stories while you're out there. You'll be running alongside someone and you start sharing everything about your lives while, the clock's ticking by and mosquitoes are biting you and it's dark out. You can't see, are we still on the race course? But I would write down these stories, and then a year later I'd look and I'd be amazed, like, wow.
Yeah.
So, what was the question? I forgot. Oh, most memorable moments. Yeah. So there are a lot of little things like that have a lot of meaning after a while when you look back at them, and they might not be spectacular moments. It might be like a Seinfeld episode. There's nothing special about that moment. It's just going through the dark night with cool breeze going through your hair and only hearing like frogs making little ribbit sounds next to you, and not being near crowds or anything. But there's a certain zen to, being in your own headspace and figuring out what it's going to take to get yourself to the finish line. And sometimes those moments just kind of get burned into your memory, and they're just as powerful as those red carpet moments.
I think a lot of those memories too of yours have inspired other people to tackle Ironman as well, or even just get into triathlon. And your wife Becky has also gotten into triathlon as well, right?
Pretty sure we have a cute
photo
queued up.
There
she
is.
There you go.
Yeah, our Whippet cheer station at Ironman, Wisconsin. Yeah.
We should have told Becky we were going to put this.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is you won't be able to see it on the podcast version,
there
so
you
we'll
go.
just tell her it's only on the
Podcast.
on Spotify.
Go to the YouTube channel if you want to see these photos that we're putting up right now.
So Becky trained with me for so many years. I mean, back in the 90s, she used to ride alongside me while I was training for the marathon. I'd be running and she would ride her bike alongside. And then she got to the point where she knew everything about triathlon, everything about Ironman that I did, except she hadn't executed herself. And she would go to Wisconsin, to Madison with us, and she would ride the Ironman Wisconsin course. And she had done it so many times, we would be riding with her and we'd say, why aren't you doing this race? Yeah, and so she needed to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
And she did do that. And then in 2021, she tackled her first Ironman race, Ironman Maryland. And that was a memorable race.
Mm-hmm.
Did it with Chris and Coach Shelley, Chris's wife, and Becky and I, and we got stung by jellyfish, and we loved every minute of it. So and then Becky went to tackle, we all went to Ironman Des Moines as well. And that was the race that I bowed out of that was one of my 3 races that I did not finish.
A lot of people with DNF that day.
Yeah, it was a tough day, and
What was going on that day?
Extreme heat and
Oh,
humidity.
yeah.
For me, I was in the middle of a period of having heart arrhythmia issues. And so I kind of knew I had a friend who was captain of an aid station at mile 15. And so I told Becky, you just go ahead and I'll catch up with you. And I knew I was going to turn my chip in at mile 15 because it was right by transition. I could grab my bike and ride right back to the hotel. And then I went back out for the rest of the evening and found Becky and cheered her into the finish.
Nice.
So it kind of was nice to see her stick with the race, and even though she got sunburned because the sunscreen wasn't applied that well. But so there's so many little memories like that, and the fact that Becky became an Ironman just thrills me. Yeah, nice. And I'm sure you all have stories about people who have followed in your footsteps, and it always feels good to know. The community part of Ironman is as long as you're interviewing me, I might as well say that's something else I talk about is the community side.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my final questions. Is going to be: are there any communities, groups, or organizations that you've gotten involved with that you'd like to let people know about, or that are meaningful and inspiring to yourself as well?
Well, I did so much by myself until 2012 when I joined your endurance group on our CompuTrainer on our bikes at the CompuTrainer studio. But up to then, I did everything by myself. Ran by myself, cycled, went to Wisconsin and trained on the course by myself. And I was getting ready to retire from endurance sports because it was getting kind of tiring. And then I started training with the folks who were with you guys for all these years, and that opened up a whole new dimension of the sport to me. It was fun to train with other folks, go ride courses with other folks, and race with other folks. And at first, I didn't quite understand why people wanted to race with their friends. And after a while, it became important to me to be able to share the experience with others.
Yeah.
So the groups, whether it's charity groups like T2 and Dare to Try, or whether it's Four-Star Endurance, Chris's coaching staff and the athletes that come to Chris, or whether it's the larger Try 312 community that you guys have created, that encompasses the downtown Chicago triathletes. There are so many people and groups. It's kind of hard to call them, to name them all. But there's a lot of this cross-pollination. There's a lot of, and when we all start to learn each other's names. So I think it's just, I'm not going to say it's one particular group. It's just the greater triathlon community that keeps it real.
I was just thinking how it's a little bit poetic, but you've been volunteering at our indoor tries. I think almost every single indoor try that we've been doing in the last decade or so.
Yes.
And so every triathlete who has come through our various programs and communities over the last 10 plus years has been impacted by Fred indirectly, whether he's been timing you on the swim, or even on the bigger scale. I think of the Chicago Triathlon, right? One of the world's largest triathlons. Yeah. And you've been there providing the water support. So literally every triathlete who's done the Chicago Tri in the last 10 plus years has been supported by Fred or swam past you. Yeah. So I think it's kind of it just says a little bit about how much you've given back to the sport as well, and how the whole sport and community as a whole is really just one big family at the end of the day.
Yeah. One other thing about me personally, it's very much a personal thing that folks learn about me after they've know me. And I said that it's a metaphor for life, and then you learn to roll with the punches. In 2009, I had a brain tumor that really made me unable to train for a while. And then I had the brain tumor removed, and I was magically able to do Ironman Wisconsin about 10 weeks later. And
10 weeks.
10 and a half weeks later, I went to Ironman Wisconsin. It was a 15-hour race, and I was just thrilled because when I first had the diagnosis, I didn't know if I was, going to ever race again, or how long, if I was going to lose my vision. And I was able to come back, and so I was thrilled. And then I had several years of heart arrhythmia that started in 2015, 16, but got bad in 2019, and had another magical procedure where they erased it. And I feel like I'm ready to get back to what I used to do. So I've learned other people have stories like that too. And sometimes, even though you hear about mind over matter, sometimes the physiology has something else to say. Like, no matter how much you want to finish or you want to start a race, the biology, your tissues, whatever, your body's not going to let you do it. Yeah. And so that's something that is humbling, and you learn to roll with those punches as well. So, I don't know what's going to get dished out to me in the future. I'm in my 60s now, but it's fun to stay in the game.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the beautiful things of triathlon is all ages, all ability levels. You can do it for your entire life. It's a lifetime and lifestyle sport, unlike any other. So you definitely exemplify that more than anybody, and I'm sure you will have inspired others to give back to the community as well over time. So it'll be neat to see all the mini Freddie Machetes on stand-up paddle board supporting future swimmers at swim clinics and the Chicago Tri in many years.
Yeah, that's something that I want to work towards, is getting a little flotilla of water support out there. I'm working on that, and hopefully next year I might have a small group.
So maybe we need to make
They all have like
t-shirts.
yeah, I was about to say
Machete.
like body glove, like water shirts that have like Freddie Machete.
No,
Yes.
And so yeah, let's poll people over the next 6 months for the name of a new water support group.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll see you at the Rockford Ironman next year.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can do a stand-up paddleboard support on
Or,
at Rockford.
Rock Lobster.
So,
the rock lobsters.
Yes, the Rock Lobsters.
But that's only when we're in Rockford.
Yes, only in Rockford.
It's brilliant, Joy. We need a new costume.
all right. Well, let's continue on through our Multisport Monday topics, where we cover a couple other things as well. We're going to do a very quick coach corner. Maybe Fred has some thoughts on this as well. We go through a weekly theme as we build up towards the Chicago Triathlon. The theme this week is heart rate training. So the question is, what tip do you have for an athlete who's trying to figure out how to do heart rate training? And so let's go around. We'll do one minute each or so of a tip related to heart rate training. Brian, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. By the way, watching on, there we go. We have now full screen. Excellent. Okay. It was just going to be the Chris and Fred show, for which is great.
We had to center
I was completely enthralled.
on Fred. So
Yes,
had to
100%.
get the extreme close-up.
Yeah. So my one key tip is, and this is one that I have given to a number of athletes, and it's not necessarily specific to this type of athlete, but it's certainly athletes that I've worked with that feel they only have one pace when it comes to whether, and it's usually running is when we do heart rate training. So it's usually when we're doing runs, is to try to get them out of their comfort zone and going a little bit slower, and being able to stay under a certain heart rate to stay in either an easy pace or a zone 2 pace, and capping it at where their percentage is or should be. Some that I've had that have gone to Chris for metabolic testing to make sure that we have really good, accurate heart rate zones for where those should be. And we have a pretty good idea of where that cap needs to be, is to take the ego out of the training day. And I say that because whether you feel like you have an all or nothing sort of focus when it comes to your run or for training, or that you only have one pace and like, well, I feel like I'm running easy, but my heart rate always spikes up into, say, the 150s or 160s, higher than it maybe necessarily should be, and is retraining that style and relearning how to run slower in order to go faster, or that you have to maybe walk it out a little bit to make sure that the heart rate stays lower and to not go above that cap. And a lot of it is your ego telling you like, no, I can go faster, I can do more, so therefore we should, versus staying true to what you should be doing and keep giving yourself that cap and saying, okay, if I hit this heart rate max that I should be going up to, if I hit that or start going over, I need to slow down or walk it out, let that heart rate come back down, and then get back into the run and just stay within that zone and allow that ego to not be part of that equation, and just do the run that you're supposed to, not what your ego wants you to do. So that's my tip for today.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Yes.
But if you go with the cliche of trust the process. I've had athletes that just fought me tooth and nail, that they could not do this training, but after several months, in some cases several years of finally just sticking with it, they have been able to have better and longer sustained runs, feeling better throughout because they stuck to it and were able to learn how to regulate their heart rate better.
No, I feel like that's a rite of passage that every endurance athlete needs to do at some point if you really want to learn how to pace well. do what we call a negative split, start slow so that you can finish the second half of the race faster than the first half on each leg, the swim, the bike, and the run.
Yeah.
And until you've done that intentional holding back, it's hard to figure out exactly what is that pace that you can sustain and still pick up, your effort on the second half of the event. So cool. Joy, do you have any other tips for heart rate training?
Breathing, focusing on your breathing, because your breathing can actually help you bring your heart rate down. If you feel like your heart rate is going too high, and it's also especially at the beginning of a race, a lot of people have this anxiety. Their heart rate is going to jump up to the roof, especially if you're getting ready to jump into some strange body of water and everyone's like freaking out. If you just start breathing in through your nose, slowly exhaling out through your mouth, that is going to naturally get your heart rate down. It's the same thing if you're just swimming laps. Do some bobs in the water. Get that heart rate down. It's about being able to finish whatever workout or race that you're doing without bonking or face planning and ending up in medical. That's always the big thing for me. Don't go to medical. That is like literally my theme. And I work on the breathing. I'm a Pilates trainer, and breathing is so integral in the world of Pilates. So why not bring it into your workouts?
Oxygen is fuel. It's how you keep your body going for a long period of time. I like to call it the poor man's heart rate monitor. If you focus on your breathing, if you are looking at your watch and you're not sure if the heart rate is accurate, optical in the wrist is not the best way to necessarily measure heart rate. So sometimes if you're like, I don't know if this sounds right, if you just focus on your breathing, you can really know exactly what effort level you're at. So cool. Good tips.
Fred,
do you have any heart rate tips?
Well, sometimes the heart rate tips are about maybe maximizing performance for the season in your training. And what I like, I have a different perspective on how heart rate is useful to me as someone who has come through a period of battling a heart arrhythmia and then having a procedure that removed it. And that is just, and this applies to everybody, not people with electrical problems in their heart. But if you look at your heart rate, you record it with your Apple Watch, Garmin watch, get to know where it should be, and if it's too high, higher than your coach says it should be, figure out what pace you need to run to keep it in the right range. But then, have that committed to memory so that when something is completely different, recognize it. Learn to recognize the pattern as your heart rate goes up. Just learn the association between pace and heart rate. And it'll change from time to time, but you'll be able to identify when something is really out of the norm. So I like the perspective of looking at what your Garmin records, your Apple Watch records, as not just something to help maximize your performance, but also something that's like this health record. So when you have 10 years of data, you can go, oh, there's something going on right here. And I think companies like Garmin and Apple will be positioned to be, almost like medical companies, because they can see patterns and they can identify patterns through millions of users that we can't identify on our own. But if you can just get to know your heart and how it responds to your workouts from day to day and season to season, I think that pays dividends.
Yep. Yeah, and I put a little segue slide up for a perfect segue from that. You were talking about, learning how to keep your heart rate in the right effort level, using a device or a heart rate monitor, and not just looking at heart rate by beats per minute, but put it in a correlated scale of rate of perceived exertion so that you can individualize your heart rate zones to you. And that's what you can use to really learn, where do I burn more fat? Where is my energy level, and energy systems balanced in terms of fat and carb metabolism. And that's what the whole like 5-zone heart rate model has kind of become a industry standard, at least in endurance sports. And there's others, but you know, I know you're a big MyZone heart rate monitor user. We use those heart rate monitors at our health club, but anyone who has a heart rate monitor, whether it's a MyZone or a Garmin or an Apple Watch, that's my big tip, is look at your heart rate as a rate of perceived exertion. So once you kind of figure out, you got all that data, figure out what your zones really should be, and that way you're more likely to follow that, right? If you're, I don't know what 132 beats means or 147, is that high, is that low? You know, until you put it in a scale, and usually that's looking at it as a percentage of your max heart rate. And so whether you're using MyZone, which is kind of based on that percentage of max, or if you have a Garmin, what I recommend to anyone who has got a Garmin out there is change one of the data fields on your watch to show percent of max heart rate. Because then you can start to understand, okay, I'm at an 80% effort level or 90%. And that correlates to heart rate zones very clearly. But yeah, there's a lot of other good tips out there for sure. Do you guys have any other general heart rate training tips?
I mean, I like where a lot of charts like this incorporate both the qualitative with the quantitative, like as you're alluding to, Chris, where you are trying to assess both what are the numbers saying, and as I think we've alluded to earlier, that sometimes these don't always are operating correctly. So whether, as Fred was mentioning before we started, that there could be any number of things that might be happening with the heart rate strap, or what's going on with your clothing, or how it's trying to measure your heart rate through on your watch based on your jostling in a run or something like that. So it may not always be 100% accurate. So it's utilizing that as one of many or multiple data sources, and using that perceived rate of exertion of like, how should you feel, like how is your breathing, and utilizing all those things. And it'll take time, like if the longer you train and better able to assess and evaluate where all these things, where pace, heart rate, perceived rate of exertion, where all those things live, you'll start getting a better understanding of like where your fitness lives, so that if you need to make an adjustment, if you're like, oh, this feels a little bit too hard, or oh, I think I could probably go a little bit stronger, you're able to sort of self-assess and not always just be like sitting there writing going like, am I in my zones? And sometimes it could just go by feel, and you'll kind of learn where that is or where that should be.
It's almost like when people are doing their run and they're not at that they're at 4.98.
Yeah.
And you got to run that 0.02 to get that 5 miles. Just start to listen to your body, because your body is going to tell you right away. Am I working too hard? If you can, as like we like to say in marathon training, if you can have a whole conversation with the person while you're running, you're in the right zone.
Yeah.
If you're like, you can't even get not even 3 words together, you're working way too hard. The easy days are meant to go easy. So when you go hard, you can go hard. It's not about going hard all out all day, every day.
And that plays a little bit to the gamification side of heart rate, which can be another good tip, is, you know, trying to stay in the right zone. And with the MyZone, for example, we do a whole gamification of earning points by staying in a certain zone. And so people go, you know, an extra 1 or 2 beats higher or 1 or 2 beats slower, just to get the precision of staying or getting those extra points. And it's funny to see how people can connect with that. If you're a little bit type A or a little bit data oriented, or even if you're not, if you're visual, like just doing it by the color coding. You know, are you in zone 2, which we usually call the blue zone, zone 3, the endurance zone, the green zone, you know, zone 4 is usually what we call the tempo or threshold zone, where you're starting to burn mostly carbs, and then the red zone where you're burning all carbs from your energy.
I love how a product like MyZone or any other product that uses the color codes makes it so easy to see. So if Becky and I are riding our bikes in Wisconsin for 5 hours, and if she has 5 hours of yellow, You know, if she has 5 hours of green, I'm going to be, I'll tell her, that was great. You were training. If she has 5 hours of yellow, I'm going to think, wow, that was like running a marathon for you. You probably might want to take it easy for the next couple of days. When you do 5 hours of yellow, you're probably going to need a recovery day, So it just at a glance, you can tell.
I feel like we need to get MyZone to sponsor this video.
Hi, MyZone. We're Tri312, Try to Shy.
Well, we might have been playing around with actually using them in our indoor tries, so we might actually incorporate some of the gamification of those in our indoor tries, and it's fun
But if you'd
because
like to sponsor us,
they have a neat little LED light. So when I ride up next to someone who's got it on their arm, you can wear it as a chest strap, but if you wear it on your arm, you can see what zone somebody is in. So you can be next to them and be like, oh, this person's flashing red. They're in the red zone. So you can tell them to back off. So as a coach, I like tools like that.
Hey, buddy, you need to slow down.
And some apps and devices like Strava and Garmin actually are really nice too, in that they'll overlay your heart rate data on like a map, so you can see what part of a course you went into the red zone.
Yep, I have that on my Garmin. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever done this as coaches, but when I've mentored some folks before, I've had a second bike computer with their power meter and their heart rate on that. It's linked to that, so I can actually tell, like, no, you're not taking it easy.
I do remote monitor some of my athletes in real time. I've texted them before, be like, why are you in the red zone right now?
Speaking of red zone, since we just had a conversation 2 weeks ago, and I think it's pertinent, especially still now, even though it's nice and cool these last couple of days, but our last conversation, we talked about heat acclimatization, how that affects heart rate and performance. So any key tips as it relates to, or if a question comes up, like, how do I do proper heart rate training? How am I staying in zone 2? And if I'm outside and it's, say, above 80 degrees, above 70% humidity.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a talk later tonight to a cycling team on a related topic. As as the heat goes up, as your core body temperature goes up, which with each heart rate zone going up, your core body temperature essentially goes up. And when you get into the red zone, your body can no longer manage its core body temperature typically. So it starts rapidly going up. And if you're in a hot weather condition and your body can't regulate its body temperature, that's a recipe for disaster. So usually the easy kind of rule that I use with our athletes is for every 10 degrees above room temperature that the heat index is, go 1 heart rate zone lower. So, you'd cap yourself. If you're in 80 degrees, you'd cap yourself in zone 4. If it goes up into the 90 degrees, you'd cap yourself at zone 3 and keep pushing it lower in terms of your ceiling, just simply to ensure that your core body temperature does not go too high. Because if it goes too high, then performance drops. So heart rate is a good proxy for thinking about keeping your core body temperature controlled.
All right.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to geek out more, I can obviously talk for hours on length about heart rate training. For those who are not familiar, I did put a little shameless plug in here on metabolic testing with a little graph if you're watching us on YouTube. Basically, just trying to point out in the little purple lines there that this is from one of my tests a while back, several years ago, my fat metabolism. So for people who want to lose weight, using heart rate is a great tool, because you can identify, especially once you've done a metabolic test and you know where you burn more fat as a fuel source, which is usually zones 2 and 3. You can rapidly lose weight just by targeting the right zone. And so instead of thinking of it I'm holding myself back to hold myself back, you're holding yourself back to burn more body fat, lean out. And when you lose body fat, you will perform faster at the end of the day. So if you want to get tested, we can always put our shameless plugs for metabolic testing in the
I send a lot
links
of my
in the
athletes
description
over to Chris to have that exact thing done, and it certainly helps out a lot. I mean, we even if we're doing good educated guessing, we're pretty close, but it's nice to know how close or more importantly, how accurate we then need to be if we're really trying to nail down performance. So that's been great. So thank you.
Especially for long course athletes. The
Yep.
longer in distance you go, the more important pacing becomes.
Yep.
Spend that time to get your zones dialed in.
And making sure they're,
precise.
again, looking at that data, being able to know how they're using their fuel sources more appropriately and more efficiently.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, we covered a lot today. We're going to do some very quick recaps and previews of what's coming up.
I did an indoor try yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah. after a long bike ride. So
Yeah.
if you want to watch Brian torture himself with an indoor try, he has a full time lapse video of an indoor try experience that you can check out on our Try 312 channel. Don't miss that.
Speaking of running, I was very happy with that on Saturday. I say yesterday, it feels like it was just yesterday. So yeah, I mean, again, a lot of it is because I'm doing so much like 70.3 training, and my long range yesterday was just staying in that low zone too, doing like early weeks, just like trying to get harder intervals. And this was sort of like that run in between that just all sustained 15 minutes. Basically an indoor try is, for a lot of people, can just be like, what is your max effort for, or like an FTP test, like doing 20 minutes on the bike. Like what is your best efforts? And, I probably had still something left in there, but I felt that pace was really good for me for a 15-minute run. So it felt great. So
that was a great sprint.
thank you.
It was, and you
made
nailed
it nailed it like with a half second to go.
And actually, I didn't even think about this, but an indoor try is a perfect threshold test for figuring out your heart rate zones.
Yeah.
Because it's a 1 hour workout. You can get your, swim, bike, and run zones figured out by doing an indoor try. So it's a fun way to do your assessments to get things dialed in much more accurately. And also, if you pace it well and you've got that energy at the end and you put in that sprint, you probably will get real close to your true max heart rate at the end of an indoor try run. So it's a good way to assess your max heart rate, your threshold, and everything in between.
Yeah.
We don't have that many things coming up this weekend because it is an extended holiday weekend. And in Chicago, a lot of things are shut down because of NASCAR being in the city. So if you're training, going out and about this weekend, just know there are a lot of streets closed in downtown Chicago.
Hopefully it doesn't get flooded like it did last year.
Oh, yeah.
Not to jinx it.
Also, for a little recon, I don't know if we have the video here. Yeah, coming up. The Northwest Indiana Triathlon Club produces a indoor try that is also the state championships for
full outdoor try.
It's outdoor try.
Oh, sorry. We're talking about indoor tries too much. Full outdoor try that is also the state championships in Indiana. So Brian, you did a wonderful interview with
Ashley. Was great.
With Ashley.
Yeah.
And their race is coming up, so definitely check that event out.
Their race will be on July 13th.
And
then on July 14th, it's the Kentucky State Championship, Tri Louisville, where I will be at.
Yeah.
If you're watching the video here, this is giving you a little visual of what the race looks like. A nice beach start. Very nice small town race, but
it's the 44th annual sprint triathlon in LaPorte County, and it is the Indiana State Championships there. This race is actually hosted, put on, organized by the Northwest Indiana Triathletes Club. So it is a race for triathletes by triathletes. So they've done a very good job just trying to be very athlete friendly. They in Ashley's interview, I don't want to spoil the conversation, but she did mention that for years the finish had been a 3.4-mile run until finally they reorganized it. They just flipped the course around to where now it is an official 3.1, an actual true 5K finish. So they're very excited about that. And to make it like a true sprint race. So.
It's the longest running triathlon in Indiana, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
So 44th annual. They also do a neat thing, which is like the Terre Haute Triathlon, the Thunder in the Valley Tri. If you win your age group, you get a little trinket that you can clip onto your finisher medal. So just fun little,
yeah.
little things like that are a nice touch.
So I highly recommend going and checking out that interview. It was a great one. For whatever reason, every time she and I try to connect and do some kind of interview, we've had an audio issue. So I'm glad we were able to get through that. Unfortunately, the first time around, we had still some good information, and but all of the information about the race that they were really trying to promote dropped off. And then, but we were able to get her back on, talk a little bit more about it so that they could promote it. But they have a 300 athlete cap. So they were pretty close to being sold out, but I would say just double check if it's a race you're looking to try to add in the month of July, and they still have, spots left available. I think that would be a good group and a good race to support.
And there are quite a few other state championships coming up. So, I want to mention those. So we just had Pleasant Prairie, the state championship in Wisconsin. So LaPorte is coming up here July 13th for Indiana. And then the next day, Joy is going down to Louisville to do Tri-Louisville.
I wonder if anybody's doing back-to-back state championships.
Ooh, I've done that before, actually, with was it Tri-Shark? So it's possible that being in the Midwest, we can have a lot of quick access to different
It's
states.
possible, however, traveling down I-65. That's all I'm going to say.
Not great.
And then last but not least, the Chicago Tri is the big Illinois state championship this year. So check that out. And that's for those who don't know, basically, if you finish normally in the top 15% of your age group, you qualify for nationals at state championships. You can win your state championship. So you get a nice little card from USAT for that. But also the top 35% in most of the distances will qualify for nationals. So a lot of competitive athletes like to focus on these, but they also have the high school championships at the state championships and club championships as well. So both individuals, clubs, and high schools can win special awards. All right, so real quick to wrap up, some swim, bike, and run news. Locally here in Chicago, we've got our open water swim clinics that have been taking place. We got another one coming up actually that same weekend, July 13th. It's not going on that weekend. And then coming up next month, just about a month away, is our TriDot Pool School in downtown Chicago. So sign up for that. It's all, I think, almost 50% sold out. So it's filling up pretty quick if anyone wants to work on their swim. Any other swimming related news?
Yep. So next local U.S. Masters swim meet is also on July 13th. Lots of things going on next Saturday. Yeah. So it's the Kraken Summer Heat swim meet that will be out in Lamont, Illinois. And it is at a 25-meter pool. So all of the distances are in meters, beginning first thing that morning around 7 a.m. for a 400-meter swim, which I will be doing. And then got some of my master swimmers that will be some first-timers during their first swim meets this week or that weekend. So we're really excited up to and including a little foursome that we're doing, our first mixed IM relay. So I have the pleasure of starting us off in the backstrokes. Everybody else had a different stroke that they really, really wanted to do. So I figured I would take one for the team and do the one that they wanted to do least and let everybody else do the swim that they really wanted to do. Or at least their top two picks.
No one wanted to do the
Nobody
backstroke?
wants to do backstroke.
It's usually butterfly.
Actually, that is the more popular one, to be honest. So, yeah.
Good swimmers.
Yeah. I think they like the challenge just a little bit more, right? So after having two neck surgeries, I was sort of eliminated from that stroke. So I know I'm opted out of the backstroke, or excuse me, the butterfly. So backstroke, here we come.
All right. In cycling news, not too much going on this immediate weekend. There are some Century Ride events coming up. The Swedish Days Ride on July 4th. Actually, there's the Joliet July 4th Century Ride. And then also the Beansy Ride. A lot of good training rides for folks doing longer distance triathlons, go out in the suburbs, get some long miles in with some nice supported aid stations at those events. And then also what I'll plant the seed for, because we're in July, is at the end of July, we have the brand new Fulton Market Grand Prix, actually the biggest criterium bike races in the country. The end of what was traditionally known as the Intelligentsia Cup Series here in the Midwest. The final race of that series is here in Chicago, and that has been rebranded this year to Chicago Grit. And so we'll see that event taking place July 28th. And we are looking for volunteers for that. So if anyone knows that they would like to do that event or participate in it, our battery is dying on our screen.
Oh, no.
I think we've been talking for too long.
All right, and on
don't
to stock market.
Yeah. So that is a event that we are looking for a lot of volunteers for. It's going to be
I just signed up to be a volunteer, so come join me.
I'm going to be there all day helping out as well. It's going to be a fun festival. Food trucks going to be right next to the Timeout Market, big food hall. So restaurant district out in the West Loop area. Super exciting event that is coming up pretty quick. So that's our cycling news, and then running events. Do we have any running news?
We really don't have any running news. We just finished the track and field trials for the Olympics.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So
the Big 10K is coming up. I think
yes,
that's the next.
The
next
Big 10K is actually on July 13th as well.
It's like everything's taking place that day. So we have a lot of activity going on. And I think that was pretty much it for our updates, right? We didn't have too many other updates.
I think that's a lot.
This is one of our longest episodes so far. So
that's a good one today. Yeah. Good chat, good conversation. Fred, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
thanks for hosting. And, I mean, I figured the least we could do is like talk shop with you for a little while.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of good stuff happening, coming up. Good history of tri experience. So yeah.
And tune in next week. We will probably have a lot of previews for all the events happening on July 13th. So it's going to be a busy summer in Chicago, and it is definitely heating up literally and figuratively right now.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, from Tri 312 crew, we're out. All right.